I'm Isaiah Maldonado here with Lyle Alenstein from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We are at Beaver Stadium right after Penn State. 52-6 win, very dominant win for Penn State. But there was a couple things that I wanted to see that I didn't get to see. Overall, not a solid performance, or not too bad of a performance, I meant to say. But let's talk about this offense first. Lyle, what did you see?
Yeah, once again, back-to-back weeks, I want to start this conversation off with Drew Allar. At first, the talk this whole week has been he's got to get that flush the next play mentality, win. Good play or bad play, he's got to be able to bounce back. He came out last week after FIU saying his performance just wasn't good enough. And, he started off red hot today. Really good, efficient first drive that led to a Nick Singleton touchdown. Had a pair of receptions, hit Trebor Pena, hit Kyron Hudson. But then, finished this game not really that great. He started off 7 for 10, then 1 for 6 on his next throws. And, had really bad interception in that second half that James Franklin talked about wanting to have back. James Franklin talked post-game about how they need to do a better job getting in the rhythm. He talked about converting on third downs. But this is a quarterback who's shown flashes of why he was that 5-star, why he's highly regarded as one of the best quarterbacks in college football, as well as a potential high draft pick next year in the NFL draft. But, he's also showed his inconsistencies, what he doesn't do well. He blows up at times. The big play, the lights, sometimes they kind of get to him. But, he kind of has got some things to sharpen out. Good opportunity with this bye week. But this offense kind of, they feed off him. Obviously he's an inferior opponent with Villanova. The points were there today. But, come Oregon, 2 weeks from now, he's got to step that play up.
I mean, we can make all the comments we want to say about people's opinions on Drew Allar, their opinions on him as a leader, but you are absolutely right. This entire team rallies behind him. He plays good, he plays bad. They're going to be right there to support him. And there was a lot of flash good things that we saw. Obviously, we saw Trebor Pena finish with 60 receiving yards. He got his first receiving touchdown on the season. We've kind of seen a little bit of everything from all 3 transfer receivers, Kyron, Hudson, Devonte, Rojas, and now Pena got to the end zone. I'm liking what I'm seeing from them. I definitely do just want them to be a little bit more involved altogether. I think Devonte Ross only finished with 1 reception today, and Kyron Hudson only finished with 2. So that does go hand in hand with the fact that Drew Allar did kind of have a little bit of a problem distributing the ball down the stretch. We mentioned that first great drive that ended up with the Singleton touchdown, but finished the game with a 55% completion percentage. Looked a little bit too shaky at times. Last week he started talking about how he was overthinking that affected his game, and I think he didn't say it this time, but I think we could kind of assume that it's kind of in the same mode. And James Franklin himself said it best. You make one mistake, that one mistake can't turn into 2. So I think in terms of just ironing out those kinks, I think this bye weekend is going to be huge for them. Just being able to come together as a unit, solidify everything they possibly can before an offense that just against, correct me if I'm wrong, they put up 69 points, 69-3 last week against Oklahoma State, was it?
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal game. They played over 80 players. That's the kind of level of offensive consistency that we're going to want to see from Penn State. So hopefully during this bye week, they get to just lock in and hunker down and do what they need to do.
Yeah, they got some things they want to, sharpen, get those things figured out, clean that tool shed. But, a couple other things that they need to clean up offensively. Another guy that James Franklin hit on in the same conversation with Drew Allar this week is Nick Singleton. Mm-hmm. He's got to play free. He's got to play loose. Improvement from last week. I think he finished with 84 yards on 20 carries today, 2 touchdowns, both from within 5 yards. But, he's still, they're lacking that elusiveness from him, breaking that explosive play. Stan Drayton, when he got to Penn State, he talked about he wanted to emphasize more Singleton's creativity. I look at that Auburn game his freshman year where he broke off that big run, kind of put his name out there, let the Penn State fans and the college football world kind of know who he is. We're kind of lacking that a little bit. I think Kaytron Allen, clear-cut RB1, considering that 1A, 1B conversation we have all the time when we talk about those 2 running backs, but I think there's been a difference between the 2. Singleton had 8 carries for 34 yards on the touchdown on that first drive. I think they just big emphasis to get on the ball, trying to find that rhythm. Kaytron today only had 10 carries, but he broke off an 18-yard touchdown run. He's looked really good. Singleton, that's the most amount of carries he's had since 2023 in a game. Really trying to find something going with him. He's kind of been not existent in the passing game as well. But obviously, if Kaytron's playing well, they can feed off him at times. But when they're both going, we talk about it all the time with these guys, 2,000-yard running backs, moving their way, inching toward that Penn State all-time rushing record. But, they got to figure it all out. And with that comes another unit that's got to prove, that's the offensive line. James Franklin talked about leaving meat on the bone, and they've kind of, seen flashes of that. They got 7 guys they view as starters. We've seen them put it all together at times, but there's sometimes, missing assignments, a couple of times where they've got some pre-snap penalties. Anthony Donko talked about how, they're close. They're close to figuring it all out. They've done some good things, but they got to put it all together. And, he didn't point to anything specific post-game, but, they got to gel. Because once this unit gets together, there's a reason why they're contenders for that Joe Moore Award. There's a reason why Kaytron and Nick are 2 of the best running backs in college football. Once it gets going, it's going to get scary, but they got to get going first.
Absolutely. There's a lot to work on offense, but let's jump to this defensive side of the ball, where Penn State, honestly, today played a near-perfect game, almost had 2 consecutive shutouts if it wasn't for an absolutely insane one-handed catch. I was watching it live, and I couldn't believe it. But obviously 52-6, the defense played phenomenal. Only 6 total yards allowed in the first quarter. I mean, we're just watching them they're holding the possession on a single drive for like a minute, and then it's right back to Penn State just because of how impressive that this defense can be. What most impressed about this Penn State defense today for you?
Ooh, I just think it's the ability to get a bunch of different contributors involved. Start with that defensive line. Zane Durant's been quiet on the stat sheet, but he makes his impact on the game felt regardless. Denai Denisa and Chaz Coleman at defensive end, continuing just to be monsters. Entering this season with Max Granville with that long-term injury, the defensive end room kind of had some questions, but those two have answered the call tremendously. We knew what Denai was all about coming in. There's a reason why he's got some first-round draft grades. But Chaz Coleman continuing to impress. He's one game away from burning that red shirt, even though he's going to. We talked about that tremendous amount. But then I move one level, and we've seen Tony Rojas and Amare Campbell have combined for 40 tackles. I believe we talked about it after Nevada. 40 tackles so far through 3 games, not through 1 game. That would be really impressive. I think we talked about after Nevada how this linebacker room entering the season also had a bunch of question marks. 2 Virginia natives are answering the call, man. They're really stepping up. They're flying all over the field. Combined for, I believe, 3 sacks today, 5 tackles for loss. Just really tremendous stuff. And then you go back one level, King Mack took the starting job over Antoine Belgrave short today. He's been impressive recently. Elliott Washington had an interception. You go all the way down the depth chart. Jameer Joseph, the 4-star freshman out of New Jersey, pick 6. He looked like he was a wide receiver or running back the way he had that ball carrying into the end zone. But I just think Jim Knowles, you compare both sides of the ball. Jim Knowles and the defense are grading tremendously better than Andy Colton at this point of the season. Both the touchdowns have been garbage time. You can see what this defense is really capable of. Granted, inferior opponents, but when you look at Penn State offense, they're also going against inferior opponents, and they're not really putting up the same kind of stat line the defense is.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We don't even have to touch on too much else. The defense has been phenomenal from top to bottom. There's a lot that we want to see. And just to credit, obviously, King Mack, who came in and had a great game, but that doesn't mean that the safety room is any less, impressive than it has been. He's obviously continued to give his, James Franklin's continued to give his props to Belgrave Shorter. He's still somebody who's going to come in and see a lot of big-time play, be in the rotation and continue to make some plays. Zakee Wheatley didn't look too bad. Zion Tracy didn't look too bad. Darius Dixon got in, made a couple of tackles.
Yes, nice play at the end of the game.
Nice play at the end of the game. We got to see a lot of different guys come in. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from this Penn State defense. But now the biggest question is, where do we feel like they lie in terms of facing Oregon? I'm going to go first. I'm not a fan yet. I really feel like Oregon has shown more, and granted their first 2 games, so a very small sample size. But I think that we can say that we want this Penn State offense to be better, but we need to see it first and foremost. And just quite frankly, 52 points, the most points they put up so far this season, but 21 points came in the fourth quarter. Those second and third string guys are getting in, even though I will give Villanova their props. They remain tenacious all the way to the very end. So it's not a matter of them just kind of taking their foot off the gas pedal. But still, we mentioned this, an FCS school. We know that they're not up to par with a Big Ten or one of the top teams in the Big Ten. So we have to see more. I think offensively, Dante Moore is going to give us a lot of problems. He's been playing very phenomenal. And then that wide receiver room, honestly, I know we haven't seen too many standout wide receivers from Oregon pan out in the NFL, but as of right now, it's looking dangerous. And I think they were just under 10 yards a carry against Oklahoma State rushing the ball. And they had about 9 different rushers come in and still be able to make an impact. So I think in terms of depth and that star-studded potential they have, I think they have us beat right now. I think the defense will give us a run for our money and keep us in the game. I think it's going to be a close game, but I need to see us iron out a few more of those kinks during this bye weekend before we head into the whiteout game. So what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think Oregon's got the upper hand right now. Entering this season, I thought Penn State on paper was the better team. Following week 1, that went over Nevada. Definitely still thought they were the better team. But Oregon, this is a team that looks a lot better, I think. Dante Moore, he transferred in for UCLA, 5-star, sat behind Dylan Gabriel last year, and, compare Oregon to UCLA right now, and it's a way better position that he's in.
Way better.
Ja'Cory Moore, wide receiver, 5 stars, look the part. This is a deep defensive room. Bear Alexander at defensive tackle, Dylan Thieneman at safety. But, this is a team that's looking really good. Last time Penn State played Oregon, we're talking about offensive issues and defensive success right now. That Big Ten championship game, Drew Allar on the offense looked really good. It was the defense that struggled.
It was the defense.
So I think it's going to be a good one. Happy Valley, whiteout. I'm assuming College Game Day is going to be there. ESPN did hint at it last week. Georgia and Alabama is another option, but I truly think it's a top 5 matchup at Beaver Stadium for the whiteout, the first top 5 matchup in whiteout history. I think it's going to be here. You could point at, for Penn State playing down to the level of some of these inferior opponents, but then you look at Oregon and they got the foot on the gas. So right now, as I'm looking at it, I got Oregon taking this one, but the whiteout crowd, some confidence, get a top 5 win in James Franklin for him. This guy who has not, I think it's once
I think it's like 1-15
Yeah,
or
it's
1-16.
bad
It's
record.
something abysmal.
You know, playing for him, playing for, you know, that reputation, try to erase that big game James narrative, you know, that he can't succeed. I don't know. I think it's going to be an exciting one. It's, you know, I'm looking forward to it. The guys that we talked to post-game, we're trying to look ahead, focus, you know, the bye week. It's not an off week, as James Franklin made clear. They're going to go to work. They're going to be off later in the week when the staff goes out and do some recruiting. But I'm excited. We have, 14 days away. It's going to be a fun one.
Lyle and I will be back in Beaver Stadium when the whiteout game happens, when Penn State takes on Oregon. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and make sure you're tuned in for the whiteout game come the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.